so let's run through this. So hi, I'm Jamie. I'm going to be sharing so much great financial information on personal finance and how to work through financial information. But I do have a couple of housekeeping items that I want to make sure that we go through on the live stream. Again, apologize for some of the technical difficulties. This is my first live stream, so inevitable it's going to have some things, but I'm excited. I'm glad you're here, so I really do appreciate it. So I wanted to share a couple of different things, that this is a live webinar, but I encourage you to take notes, ask questions during the presentation. We're going to have access to the full presentation afterwards. There's going to be a downloadable PDF, and you can make sure you go at your own pace. There's also a chat box that's available, and encourage you to kind of use that to share insights that you learn, things that you're needing to use. So again, use that chat box. We'd love to hear the different information that you're using. So be aware that during the Q&A time where you may ask a question, your username and your question may pop up on the screen. So it's kind of cool, but just be aware of that. If you do ask a question, your name could appear. So I wanted to let you know upfront that I am not a financial advisor. However, I'm going to share some information that has helped me out, some life experiences, and share my life experiences with you. So it's for educational purposes, and you can take that education, but what you do with it is really up to you, but it can really be a transformative experience. So again, there's a lot of information I'm going to go through. We're not possibly going to go into deep dive into all the different areas, but maybe the detail that it deserves. But feel free to follow me on my social media outlets. You can find more details about information a little bit more in depth. And I always go into a little bit more information later, but I'll be sure to share my contact information at the end. I do have 3 asks for you. If you could do me this favor, I would really appreciate it. The first one is smash that like button. Go ahead and hit that like button, because it really helps the live stream. It helps me out. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. The second thing I would ask you to do is subscribe if you're not already subscribed to my channel. It would really help me out. And also, I'm here to help you figure out your financial journey and find out different things. So if you have questions about different financial things, I'm here to answer them. And I produce new contents every week to help you out. And the last thing I would ask is, would really help me out, is be sure to share this link out with your friends, people who are interested, because personal finance is kind of a taboo topic that people really don't feel comfortable talking about. And so let people know that you're interested in this, because again, we're going to talk about some things. When we talk about money, it can get a little controversial. And so, but these are things that have helped me. I'm here to help clear up some confusion you may have, give you clear direction, and help with your money. So a little bit of the agenda, we're going to make a slight adjustment to the agenda because we did have some of those technical difficulties at the beginning. So we'll get right into a little bit about who am I, and I'll get into kind of the meat and potatoes of why you came. You came to understand your finances better. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is how to choose a bank, how to build up savings, how to make it automatic, how to make budgeting not so scary, and how you don't even have to budget for savings, and how you can make your savings automatic, how to eliminate debt, and how to invest for the future. I'm also going to share 3 principles that what guide me in my decision making. They've really applied to me. Pretty much any financial decision that I have, I kind of use that as a filter to understand if this is going to be something that I need to use. And so you're not going to want to miss this. You're going to definitely want to make sure that you see those principles. And I'll also share some recommended resources at the end, and I'll go over where you can find this information, and again, how to get a hold of me, and maybe if you want to contact me to get a one-on-one coaching session. I'll share all of that information at the end. So a little bit about myself. Who am I? I'm a husband, a father. I've got 3 beautiful children, 6, 4, and 2, as you see in that picture. And so I love them dearly, and they're really the whole reason why I am so passionate about personal finance. But I know, like you have a family or working towards growing your family, and so that's what's important to you. And so with that, I'm the founder and creator of The Saving Secret, and my mission is to help you be intentional with your money, is to make sure that you make good decisions. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, any other social media platform. You can check me out on my website. But my goal is to help you be intentional and to help you be financially independent. And you may be asking yourself, what is this financial independent? We're going to get into it. But a little bit about myself. This is where I've been on my journey, and this is who I am. So just a couple of kind of highlights, if you will. I've always been cheap. This is my first car that I ever had. I got this in college, bought it for $3,000 cash. So this is just always looking for a great deal. I actually had this car as my only car when we were married for the first 4 years of our marriage. So definitely always looking for a deal. And, like many of you, you might be looking for a good job, trying to find that. For me, I'm not from this Northwest Arkansas area that I live in currently, but I came here and didn't really know what I had to do. But with no moving package, no sign-on bonus, no real job, I kind of made it work. And I was able to make the right connections, and I loaded up my Bonneville and that little U-box, which, as you can tell, that U-box is just, if you can't afford a real moving package, you get one of these. It's enough to fit a mattress and a couple of boxes. And so that's just a little bit about some of these journeys that I've gone through. Just on a personal note, you saw that picture of my family. My oldest son actually experienced some crazy medical experiences. Crazy story. I actually have this on another video that you're welcome to check it out. But basically, because of the situation I was in, I had hit max out of pocket within 2 years, and it cost me $20,000. And so that's some of the experiences that I've had where just starting out, it got really challenging. But, always looking at the prize to figure out what I can do best. And so this was one of the great things that I bought early on in my marriage. After having those huge medical expenses, we really wanted to find ways to eliminate and reduce our expenses. And so buying this home allowed us to really pay off all of our debts. And as we've grown our family, we have since moved from this home. So we no longer live there, but it's a great reminder of early sacrifice as if we have it. So right now, currently kind of on the trajectory that I'm working. We've bought a brand new home. We've been in this home for a little over 2 years. And so we're on track to pay it off at about a year in July of 2021. So that's a little bit about me and some of my journey. But how does this story and how do some of these things, how can I relate to you? What is this important? Why does this even matter? Well, there's a lot of things we can learn from experience. And so one of the things that I learned early on is you really need to eliminate and truly try to limit your expenses. For me, I wanted to avoid debt as much as possible. As you saw, that beautiful Bonneville, that 2002 got me. It was my only car that we had in the family for the first 4 years. And so it was great. There was lots of car repairs, but it was important to avoid debt. So that was something that was really critical, and that really helped me, was limiting my expenses. Also, as we bought that home, it was a very affordable home. Not everybody can find a home like that in the location where you live. But for me, I was able to find a great home. Definitely needed a little TLC, needed some handiwork inside, but we were able to build equity and also able to take care of our debt while in that home. And we love that home. So it was great. But, focus on becoming debt free. I graduated college with $10,000 worth of student loans, and that was all the debt that I had. And I thought I was going to make bigger progress as life had it, but I had a lot of experiences that it took me 3 years to pay off that student loan debt, and all the other debts that I had. But once I become debt free, I was able to really focus on building wealth through paying off my home. And for me, our goal is to pay off our home within 5 years of paying off our debt. And then 7 years after paying off our debt, we become focusing on becoming financially independent. So that's some of the things that I've learned. And so for me, you might be looking at me and say, well, you look like you're going to be 15 years after graduation, you're going to be financially independent. How is this possible? Well, I'm going to go step by step of, regardless of the situation you're in, how can you make this happen? So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to go over exactly how to do it. And so again, if you haven't picked up your pen and paper, this is the point where you're going to want to make sure that you have your notes handy and ready to go, because it's really important. I'm going to cover a lot of content. I can promise you I'm going to go faster and you're going to have a lot of comments. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. We'd love to hear your journey as you're learning some of these things, and so I can help you out. And so keep in mind at the end, the last 15 minutes, at 4:45-ish, or where we wrap this up, we're going to spend some time. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions. So if you do have some questions, you're welcome to put it in throughout, but we will have a dedicated time set up at the end where we'll go over some of those. So again, if you haven't got your pen and paper ready, this is the time. And we're going to go really quick through a lot of great content. So all good things start with a really powerful quote. And this is from a quote from one of my favorite books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is habit number 2. This is from Mr. Stephen Covey, is begin with the end in mind. And so it's important as you set goals that you know where you want to be. And the first habit that Stephen Covey talks about is being proactive. And so you are being proactive because you're watching this and you're participating in to learn about finances and how you can be better than you are today. So you're already taking care of step 1, and I'm going to share with you what does that vision look like on step 2. On habit 2 is Stephen Covey calls it. So financial independence, I've used this term a lot. And so it's the end goal that we're working towards. Some people, you may have heard the term FIRE, financially independent, retire early. But what is financial independence? And I've already used it a lot, and I'm going to use it a lot more. So it's good that we have an understanding of it. It's the status of having enough income to cover your living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be dependent on others. Having to be employed or dependent on others. So that's what financial independence is. Doesn't mean you have to stop working. It means you have the full flexibility and the freedom to stop working if you so choose. Again, another word you could use is self-reliant. So I believe that anybody can work towards financial independence no matter your situation. You may be looking at this and saying, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. How could I ever get to financial independence? Well, I'm going to walk through this journey and share it with you. So let me share with you the next step. So setting up your personal finances. There's really 3 things that you need to get started with. It's setting up your bank accounts, having a budget, and you're going to hear me talk about budget. When I talk about budget, it's really budget off of your expenses rather than your income, and how to set up savings as your default. We're going to go through all 3 of these. So the first one is finding the right bank. You need to find a bank that has no fee checking account. This is going to be extremely important. There's a lot of large banks that charge for direct deposit or minimums that you're going to need to cover for specific things. So it can be kind of convoluted and kind of tricky to navigate. So you want to make sure that there's no fees. You have access to money through free ATM withdrawal or ATM with reimbursement, so that you have access to your money. And many of the big banks don't offer some of these services. So one of the things I recommend is considering looking at an online bank. Again, if your bank has free, no fee checking and has a lot of these requirements, you might not need to change, but it's definitely something worth to consider. The second thing is a high yield savings account. This is where you want to have your money actually grow. You want to have a place where you put your money where it's actually doing something. And for whatever reason, after time with the low interest rates that the federal government is issuing, we pretty much have savings have basically virtually gone away. But there are places where you can receive a high yield savings. You just have to look at it. These are 3 banks that I recommend, but there's other banks you can choose as well. 68% of Americans don't use a formal budget. That is a scary thought. So if you're one of the third of Americans who don't have a budget, today is where you can join the other third of Americans who do have a budget. I'm going to walk you through how to be intentional with your money, to how budgeting doesn't have to be so difficult, and how you can control and kind of monitor and keep track of your expenses. What are some of the tools and resources that are available for free to help you be able to accomplish this? A budget does not have to be difficult, but for so much you hear budgeting off your expenses, and that's the key. Is, again, the focus should be on your expenses and not budgeting. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So budget, when I say budget, again, I've said it a lot, is budget off of your expenses, not off of your income. What I mean is you want to start focusing on lowering your expenses. Find ways to lower the three largest expenses are your home, food, and transportation. And as I briefly shared with you at the beginning, I had to make some sacrifices for transportation. I had that same Bonneville for 4 years before I bought our second car. We had a kid, I had to bike to work. We went through a lot of, challenges at the beginning to make sure that we could help lower our home expenses. Again, that was a lot of times to take care of the medical expenses that we were working towards. Another one would be, our home, finding a home that you can work towards actually building an asset. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to pay off your home, but you really want to find ways to lower your expenses. And I share lots of different videos and other resources of how to do this. One of the favorite ones that I do is about my cell phone bill. I'm very passionate. I use what's called Mint Mobile, and instead of paying for a monthly charge, I pay for it yearly. And it works out to being about $180 a year, which is $15 a month, which is unlimited talk, text, and enough data to get me through the end of the month. So it's a great plan. I've got a whole video and other resources about that. That's just one example, but really find ways to lower your expenses. But lowering your expenses, you need to find a tool that can help you track your expenses. Because if you're not able to track your expenses, a budget isn't really going to do you any good. And today there are so many free tools that are out there that help you build your expenses and help you track your expenses. One that I've used for the last 3.5 years is the EveryDollar app. I've done a full review on this. You're welcome to check it out. But again, you need to be able to track your expenses, not just create a budget, but track your expenses. And there's a lot of free apps and tools out here who can help you. And so if you're interested, again, I've done some other videos on that, but that's extremely important. And regardless of whether you use these budgeting apps or another app that works for you, is you need your expenses. And that's the real key, is not just making a one-time budget, but really to help you track it. And really, it's important to make sure that you plan for life's unexpected events. Again, like I said, I graduated with just $10,000 of student loan debt. But again, it took me 3 years to pay off all of my debt. It's because things come up. I had to move. You got to find job hunting. Children can get expenses, medical bills. You may need to buy a car. All of these things can add up and can be very challenging. But remember that a credit card is not an emergency fund. It can do so much more harm that if you don't pay it off in full, you'll have to pay back the original plus interest. So again, I'm going to walk through how to set up your money. You can make savings your default. And what I like to say is you're never going to need to budget savings again. And this is where the game changer happens. And this is where, this is what you've came for. This is why you've come. And so I'm going to share this with you. How do you set this up? And I use this line that says, don't save first, save everything. And so I'm going to show you how to save everything first through your savings account and then move it to your checking account. So let's get into this. So setting up savings as a default really comes down to these three core things. Is you need to have all of your income, this includes direct deposit, go directly into your savings account. Once your money is going into your savings account, then you can budget off of your expenses. Figure out, you've created a budget, you know what your expenses are, how much money do you need from your savings, and you're going to transfer that amount into your checking account. This is how you're going to set up savings as a default. If you do have debt and you're working towards how to navigate this, so a goal to work towards is if you have some debt, let's say you have you want to make sure you have enough debt, you have enough money to cover your monthly expenses plus $1,000. So what I mean by that is at the first of the month, you have enough money in your checking account to cover all of your expenses for the month. And then you have $1,000 in your savings account. Now, some of you may be sitting there looking at this and say, that's great and that sounds good, but I don't even have enough money. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not able to just put things into my savings. Well, you need to first start with putting your money into savings because you're going to look for ways to actually find ways to take less money out of your savings account. So let's walk through how do all of these steps really come together. So the way this comes together is you take your income and you put it into your savings automatically. You put this into your savings account. And this is so critical. You set this up with direct deposit. Then you need to budget. And again, there's a lot of different apps that can help you create a budget. And once you figure out what that budget is, you transfer that amount into your checking account. You need to make a physical transfer from your savings into your checking. And then throughout the month, you need to track your expenses, whether that is through a mobile app or whatever system you have. There's a lot of different resources out there that will help you track your expenses. But this is so critical. What I love about this plan is now by doing this, you're going to naturally find ways to lower your expenses. And because you don't want to move your money out of your savings account, you're also building up savings automatically. You're never going to need to budget or figure out how much you're going to need to save again. So this is so critical. Now, I know I went through so many of these things so quickly, and you probably have a lot of questions from there. But I promise you, we're going to have time at the end. But let's talk about if you've got some debt. How do you tackle debt? So it's almost impossible to save money when all of your money is servicing debt. So in order to build long-term wealth, you need to become debt-free and truly stay debt-free. So debt is the worst poverty, and so much of the world will focus on income, especially if you're new to the workforce and you're trying to find ways to try to focus on building your career. You might be focusing on I need a large income, and a large income can help. But remember that a large income isn't necessarily going to take care of all of your financial needs. It's what you do with your income that's more important than what you make. And so one of the challenges I would keep saying is you need to find ways to avoid debt, but also find ways to take care of debt if you have it. So I've talked a lot about building a plan to avoid debt, but if you have debt like student loans, car loans, credit cards, how do you eliminate it? So if you want to get rid of debt, you want to follow what's called the debt snowball. And this method is the best way to eliminate debt. This does not include the mortgage. We'll get on to that later. But before the month starts, you need to have a month's worth of your expenses sitting in your checking account, and you need to have $1,000 in your savings account. Once you've had that moment happen, you're ready to start tackling debt. And how are you going to do this? You need to calculate how much money can you contribute towards debt. So like I said before, you're going to pull everything out of savings except for that $1,000, because now you have a full month plus you have $1,000. If something happens within the month, you can take care of it. And then you're going to pay everything towards the smallest debt until that debt is paid off. And then you're going to list them from smallest to largest, your debts. And once you take care of the smallest debt, you're going to take care of the next one. And you're just going to keep building momentum. And that is how the debt snowball method works. Again, I've done a full review and detailed step-by-step of how to set it up. But just know that the debt snowball method focuses on taking care of the smallest debt first, eliminating that, and then moving on to the next one. So once you're debt free, you can really start building some wealth for the long term. So what is wealth? Another word people use to describe wealth could be net worth. And net worth is simply what do you own minus what do you owe. And so if you're debt free, if you're completely debt free, you don't really have to subtract anything that you owe, right? Because it's only what you own. In business terms, if you're a business student or you've gone to school or you've heard this term, we use the word an asset, which an asset is just something that you own that has value. And that could be money, investments, property. These are things that you have. So what are some assets that you should work towards building? So one of the first assets that I think is great, and it applied to my story, and I think it can apply to many people, and it doesn't have to apply to everybody, but for a lot of people, owning a home is a great way to build wealth. And you notice I didn't just say buying a home or getting a mortgage. Again, it's working towards truly owning a mortgage. You want to have the mindset that you're going to own this. So again, a goal you want to focus on is building equity in your home. When you can buy a home that has great value, you're able to build that value. If you do have a mortgage and you don't have 20% down and you had to get PMI, you should work on a plan to eliminate PMI over the next 2 years. Because PMI is private mortgage insurance. This is not something that you're going to want to have on a new loan if you happen to have it to get you in the first home. For me, I had PMI when I bought my first home, but again, I worked on eliminating it because that's the debt that I don't want to have. And then once you've worked through that, is have a plan to pay off your home early and strategically put extra money towards that payment every month. And so that's a great way to build wealth. It's not the only place to build wealth, and not everybody has to own a home in order to get financial independence. So another great place to look into is retirement accounts. And retirement accounts are simply just a great place to put money that has long-term growth. You're not able to take money out of a retirement account without any kind of fees or changes in government rules. Right now there are some different rules that are happening related to COVID, but typically you're not going to have full access to your retirement accounts until you're 59 and a half. And so a couple of retirement accounts that I recommend is first to max out the health savings account. And if you're not familiar with a health savings account is an account where it's coupled with a high deductible medical plan. And as you can tell, you can save money. And by saving money, the money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and you're able to pull that money out tax-free. So it's called triple tax benefited. So again, like I said earlier, most money won't have full access till you're 59 and a half, but with a HSA, you're able to use that money towards qualified medical expenses. And as you heard earlier, I'm maybe a little jaded towards some of the challenges that people might have with medical expenses, because it's not if they happen, it's when, and it's for how much. So that's definitely an account that I would encourage you, if you have access to it, to take advantage of. Another account to take advantage of is if your company offers a 401k and they offer a match. This is definitely something where you're going to want to get started and take advantage of it. Again, I really wouldn't get into retirement accounts unless you're debt-free outside of the home. So you shouldn't really be focusing on building wealth if you haven't taken care of the debt in the first place. Another one to really consider is choose the Roth over the traditional. I have done a whole breakout of exactly the difference between the Roth and traditional, pros and cons. But typically you're going to want to choose the Roth, which just means that you pay money on the front side, but your investments will grow tax-free, opposed to getting a discount on the taxes on the front side. You will have to pay taxes on the back side with the traditional. But you're also going to want to look at whatever options are available at your company, see what they have, and just to try to take full advantage of them. And so for me, again, a couple of goals to go through is have a health savings account if you qualify, because like for me, I've had $20,000 worth of medical expenses. I did not have a health savings account at that time, but I definitely was aware of it and working towards that. But again, you don't need to wait until your home is paid off before you start retirement accounts. And I recommend starting to contribute anywhere between 10 and 15% of your income towards retirement accounts. Again, this is not a time where you necessarily want to completely eradicate, completely maximize your retirement accounts. That can be done later, but you really want to start investing in it because it's a great way to do it for the long term. But how does this wealth building activities, how does this play into the bigger picture? How do all of these pieces kind of come together? So again, you want to be investing for the future. And I've gone through a lot of different things. But if you look at this, this is kind of an easy snapshot. If you want to screenshot this, whatever you want to do, this is really the actions. These are the things that you're going to want to take that are going to help you build wealth for the future. And again, those actions are setting up your savings and your checking account. Have your money directly go into your savings account is what I've done and what I recommend to people. By doing that, it's going to force you to look and budget off of your expenses, because you're going to need to know how much money do you need to cover your expenses. At this time, you're going to be able to build savings automatically because life is going to happen. You may have a plan in place, but somebody's going to get sick. There's going to be a medical bill, a car breaks down, a life event that's going to throw off your plan. But if you're building savings automatically, you're going to be able to take care of those expenses. Work on becoming debt-free and work on truly staying debt-free. That's going to really help you. Figure out and get started with retirement account. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fully max out everything, but get started with it. And then work towards home ownership. If you fully paid off and have your home ownership, then you can move on maxing out your retirement investing and your non-retirement investing. And so that's where you can really reach your financial independence goals. But these are the processes of things of how to get started. So if you want to be financially free, you need to become a different person than you are today, and whatever has held you back in the past. So I've shared a lot of different things that may be different than what you're used to, but this is the time to take charge. And so I'm going to go over for the last couple of minutes. I'm going to share some of these principles. These are really, really important. Again, you may want to start thinking about the questions, but these are definitely the time that you're going to want to take notes to these 3 key principles that I share and are extremely important. So let's check those out. So I've gone over the path of how you can follow to kind of lead you to financial independence. Now I'm going to share the 3 key principles that will help you stay on the path, because there may be people who give you financial advice that doesn't really make any sense, and there may be things that you disagree with. But at least I'm going to share these principles with you, so at least you'll understand my perspective. And I can tell you, like I said, these perspectives is my perspective. You can do whatever you want with it, but this is my filter. So the first key principle that I would share with you is savings rate is greater than rate of return. And what rate of return is a lot of people are very familiar with what rate of return is. It's basically how much money you're going to make off an investment. And you may have asked the question, I think it's very interesting that he's very pro paying off his home before maximizing his investments if that's not going to yield him the most rate of return. It's because I'm not focused on the rate of return. What I'm actually focusing on is my savings rate. And what is savings rate doesn't mean the amount of money I'm getting from my savings account. A savings rate is really the amount of money that you have available that's going to grow your investments. So for example, if you're following my plan and you're putting your money directly into your savings account, and let's say you put your money into a savings account, let's say you make $4,000. Okay, that's the money that you're bringing in every month, and you have to pay $3,000 towards expenses. And that rest, that 25%, even if you weren't doing anything with it, would be in savings, or you can invest it, or you can do other things with it. Then you'd have your savings rate of 25%. So those are just some of the things to be thinking of and be cognizant of. So savings rate is greater than rate of return. And so a couple of key insights is decreasing your expenses will automatically increase your savings rate. So again, if you eliminate your home payment, you're going to be able, if your home takes up 25% of your take-home pay, you've given yourself an increased savings rate of 25%. And just remember, a high savings rate is going to achieve what we've determined as financial independence faster than just increasing your rate of return. Because if you're only able to save 5% of your money, but you're getting a huge rate of return on, it's not going to be as impactful as somebody who's going to get slightly a lower, maybe a lower rate of return, not nothing, but a lower rate of return, but is investing so much more of their money. So that's financial principle number one. Key principle number two is financial independence is greater than retirement. And I've already talked a lot about what is financial independence, but I've got the definitions up there for you. But again, retirement is simply the act or the fact that you're leaving and stopping work. So you can retire before 59 and a half. You can retire really whenever. It's not really dependent on a number. But being financially independent means that you have the assets and the value to really move forward and accomplish that. One of the things that helps reach retirement and financial independence is retirement accounts. And retirement accounts are a great place to invest, but remember, it's not the only place that you should invest, because you're not going to have access to all of that resources until you're after the age of 59 and a half. And the third key principle is the Trinity study, which is also known as the 4% rule. So I've talked a lot about financial independence, and some people might say, how could you possibly know mathematically if you're going to have enough money to cover your expenses for the rest of one life? That seems impossible. Well, there was some professors at Trinity University that wanted to answer the question to figure out what is the effective withdrawal rate you could make from your portfolio that would make you have money for the rest of your life. So one of the things that they determined was they did a lot of studies, and they figured out that an investor could expect a 7% rate of return. You know, historical rate of return on the S&P 500 has been about 8%. If you go back to the 50s, if you go back even further to the 20s, where there wasn't even quite 500, it's closer to 10%. Even through the ups and downs of the economy, consistently you can expect about an 8%. Now, of course, when I say 8%, there's going to be years that are down, years that are up, and everywhere in between. So what they did was they took that number of expected rate of return and they subtracted your inflation rate. So they assumed a 3% inflation, which has been pretty accurate, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, and they got to 4%. So if we look at a real example and we say you have $1 million portfolio and you withdraw 4% of your money, that would be $40,000. So let's assume that's what your expenses were. And you assume that you can get a 7% rate of return because the history has shown 8, right? So at January 1st, your investments will show $960,000 and your savings account will have $40,000 in it, let's say. And at the end of December 31st, your investments will actually have over $1 million, and you need to move more money in for the next time. So in order to take money out without touching your income is to follow the 4% rule. And so if you want to figure out what that number is, what your investment number is, it's kind of the inverse of that. So if you figure out you take 25 times your expenses, and that will get you your investment number. So again, once you have your investment number, it's 4% of that. So that's the 4% rule. So today, you've heard so much about different things against conventional wisdom. This is a great quote from Sam Walton that says, "Swim upstream, go the other way, ignore conventional wisdom." So if you're not familiar, Sam Walton was the creator of Walmart, and Walmart is done a lot of different things, has grown a lot, even since he has passed away almost 30 years ago. So again, thank you for being here. I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm just a regular person who's got life experiences that I've shared. And so I love spending time with my family, but I also, one of the greatest joys I have is to help people understand money on a deeper level. And so to kind of wrap it up, we've gone over a lot today. I'm going to share some of these recommended resources that we have. We'll share a link to where you can get access to some of these on the website. But again, these are just some of the things that I mentioned earlier. But again, I'm here to help you. We kind of, appreciate you if you were here when we had some technical difficulties as we go through it. So we're going to set up about 10 minutes. We're going to have some Q&A. So we'll go to that point. But I would just say, if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that like button, that subscribe. So I really appreciate you being here. And this is my contact information. So again, you can find me again on some of the social media at theirs, and also find me on my website. So let's open it up for questions. So are you saying you should wait to contribute to retirement until you've paid off my debt? No, and won't be missing out on money from employer matching. So yes, that is a controversial topic. And I would say, again, that's my recommendation. Again, you can do what you want. But again, until you truly eliminate your debt, I personally know people who have debt and then they've lost their job and they really wish that they had their debt taken care of before they figured out what they had in their 401k match or things like that. So yes, you are right. You're going to be missing out on that company match. But remember, like I said before, the goal is to increase your savings rate. So that's what I would encourage you to focus on, is increasing your savings rate, and eliminating debt is how to increase your savings rate. So that's what I would recommend you do first. Great question. Yeah, you're right. Ally does keep lowering the savings rate. And again, it's not because Ally's greedy and want more money. It's all the savings rate is dictated by the rate the Fed gives banks to how much the banks charge, how much the Fed charges them to take money. So yes, Ally has lowered banks. I think it lowered the savings rate. I think it's funny. I will say this. Ally is still one of the best. When I first started with them in February of 2007, it was 1%, and it got up over 2%, and then it's back down to 1%. So again, it's lower than what I'd like it to be, but it's still higher than most traditional banks. But yes, it's really related to the Fed rate. Good question. How can someone pay off their home in 5 years as a new graduate with no assets? Sounds like eating a lot of rice and beans. Well, it can seem kind of tricky paying off it. So again, it's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. So again, it's all about increasing your savings rate. Again, you don't have to accomplish that goal. But again, the goal is to increase your savings rate. And that's going to be the driving force for me to kind of move forward with that. So yeah, you're right. It is definitely not for everybody. But if you don't have any debt, you're able to contribute to paying off your home early. It's really not that difficult if you don't have any other debt. How long do you keep putting money in savings until you start saving for retirement and non-retirement accounts? This is another great question, and I think it's important to think about how you really want to. So people call an emergency fund. An emergency fund can be 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Again, what I like about the method that I teach is you're not going to have to focus on figuring out what 3 to 6 months of expenses is because you've already been focused so much on your expenses that you're going to know exactly what that is. So 3 to 6 months is what experts recommend. I recommend that. Again, if you're completely debt-free, I do recommend, if you want a hard number, I say $10,000 is kind of a good number to shoot for because it kind of gets you that 5th digit. So that's something that I would encourage you to check out. Thanks for that. So do you only try to move money from your checking to your savings once per month? Yes, that is the truth. I do try to only move money from savings into checking once. Now, the federal, there actually is a limit on the number of transactions you can move money from savings into a checking, and it's 6 per cycle, which is basically a month. And so I typically do plan out a full month in advance, and so I make sure that I'm not worried about it. So basically I focus on making sure that I have my budget actually right. Now, if something was to come up and I had an emergency come up, I could transfer my money from my savings into my checking. So we might have time for one more question. And then again, I really appreciate you guys being here and sharing in this. So we got time for one more question. So, well, thanks. Well, I appreciate, talk about your wife about, what was this saying? Oh, how do you talk to your wife about money? So that's another kind of a tricky one. So yeah, I've heard the term that I've heard somewhere that there's 2 kinds of people. There's the kind of the financial nerd, and then there's the free spirit. As you've guessed, I'm definitely the finance nerd, kind of figuring out the number. My wife's more of the free spirit. But again, if you follow what I shared, is really the goal is to focus on coming together what your budget should be. So knowing your expenses, figuring out what you want to have in your expenses before the month starts is really dictated by you and your wife, not dictated by what the number is. So for example, my wife and I, you've seen some of the examples I've shared. I'm pretty cheap, but my wife wanted a mini grand piano, and we found a good deal on one, but that wasn't necessarily part of our budget. It wasn't the rice and bean budget, but we had counseled about it and we put it in our budget, and we were able to make that transaction happen. So we came together. So there's going to be times where you need to hold yourself accountable to that budget that you mentioned. And then again, it might be something that you introduce for the following month, but it's definitely something that you want to counsel with and make it your own. So again, thanks for sharing, joining me in this. The way that you can get access to this live stream is you can check out my website. We'll have a link there on the website. I've got it posted right there, thesavingsecret.com. Once you go there, we're going to have a link where you can click, and it'll give you access to a downloadable PDF to this presentation. So I really am grateful for you guys being here. I know we had some technical difficulties and some things that kind of happened, but doing your first live stream, it can be extremely challenging, but I definitely want to give a shout out to Lynn, who's kind of behind the scenes, has helped me a lot build this presentation, helped me a lot with branding. I would not be presenting this information today if he wasn't here helping me all along the way. So I really do appreciate Lynn in helping me with this, presentation. But again, please like, share out the website to get more details of finding out more information. Check out the YouTube channel, maybe check out some more videos. But thank you so much for participating in this live stream, and I hope you have a great one. I will share new videos before you know it. So thanks so much. Have a good one. Take care.